You ever have one of those days where the world just kind of stops? Because let me tell you, for everyone inside that little police station in Millbrook, Georgia, the world slammed to a halt the second Sophie walked in. Tiny, teary-eyed, and clutching her stomach like she was trying to keep her heart from falling out. She looked so lost, and you could tell, right from the first step she took, that this wasn't about a lost puppy or a scraped knee. No, this was bigger. Officer Michael was finishing his coffee when he saw her, and just for a second, he forgot how to breathe. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said, crouching down, his voice soft like the hush before a storm. Sophie just looked at him, then at Officer Rachel, who had put her files down and crossed the room like something in her gut told her this little girl needed her. "Does every dad do this?" That's what Sophie finally said. And man, you could hear a pin drop. 5 words. 5 tiny words that landed in that station like a thunderclap. "What do you mean, honey?" Rachel asked, sitting so she wouldn't tower over Sophie. But Sophie just shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I just wanted to know, because if every dad does it, maybe I should just get used to it." That's the kind of question that splits you wide open, because how do you answer that? Sergeant Bill, the old-timer behind the desk, just quietly picked up the phone. Instinct, I guess. He knew this was going to be a case that sticks. Michael offered his hand and said, "You're safe here, Sophie. We're going to figure this out together." And for a long moment, the only sound was Sophie's breath. But she took his hand, courage bigger than she was, and that's when the story really started. Rachel asked if she wanted to talk about something else, to ease her in, and Sophie said she'd walk there from her house on Maple, the one by the big oak tree her mama used to love. You could see her eyes light up just a little, mentioning her mom, then go dim again. Her mom had gone to heaven 3 years ago, and after that, everything changed. Pancake Sundays, bedtime stories, spinning in the kitchen, gone. And her dad, well, he wasn't the same either. He'd started saying hugs made kids weak, bedtime stories were for babies, that she had to toughen up. Rachel, who'd grown up in foster care, understood that kind of empty. She asked, "Sophie, when was the last time your daddy hugged you?" Sophie thought about it, brow furrowed. "I think it was at Mama's funeral. After that, he said no more hugs, no more crying, none of that softness." Michael asked if she had friends, and Sophie shook her head. "Daddy says friends make you weak, make you expect things you can't have. When you expect kindness, you just get disappointed, so it's better to expect nothing." You could see Michael just swallow hard, trying to keep his composure. The officers asked her what she saw at her friends' houses, and Sophie said their parents hug them, say, "I love you. Good job. Sweet dreams." She wondered if maybe her dad just forgot how after her mom died, or if he loved her in his own way. That's why she came. She needed to know if every dad was like hers. Because if not, maybe something was wrong at home, and maybe someone could help. Rachel asked, "Does your dad know you're here?" Sophie said no. He thought she was at school, but she couldn't concentrate, and her teacher, Mrs. Peterson, kept asking if she was okay. She almost told her, but got scared, because Daddy says family business is private, and if I talk, people might interfere. Interfere with what? Rachel pressed gently. "With how he's raising me," Sophie whispered. "Because his way makes me strong." Just then, the phone rang, and Sophie jumped up, panicked. She thought she should go back to school, terrified of disappointing her dad more than making him angry. Rachel, quick on her feet, suggested calling the school to let them know Sophie was safe. For the first time, Sophie seemed almost amazed, like it was a foreign idea that anyone, let alone a teacher, would worry about her. "Really? Even if it's just me?" she asked. "Especially if it's you," Michael said. But Sophie struggled to believe it, because her dad had convinced her that caring only sets you up for hurt, that you should never expect love. Rachel explained that different families have different rules, but not all rules are good for kids. Sophie started listing them. She couldn't ask for things, couldn't cry, couldn't talk to neighbors, couldn't ask for hugs, couldn't say, "I love you," unless she really, really meant it. So much so that she'd been saving those words up since her mama died. She hadn't heard them in 3 years. That's not just neglect. That's a drought of affection so deep it rewires a child's soul. Sarah Williams, the social worker, arrived, drawn in by the school's call. She listened as Sophie asked the same question again. Is my daddy's way normal? Sarah told her, gently, that every child deserves to feel loved every day, not because they earned it, just because they're alive. Sophie was floored. She repeated it, tasting the words. For the first time, she heard that her needs weren't weaknesses. Even Rachel chimed in. Love is like sunshine. It shouldn't have to be earned. Sophie asked, so why did Daddy change? Sarah explained, sometimes grown-ups get lost in their own pain and forget how to love. That's not an excuse, but it is an explanation. Sophie, with more compassion than most adults muster, worried about her dad being lonely if she didn't come home. But the adults told her it wasn't her job to fix her father, that she deserved to feel safe. When her father stormed into the station, furious and cold, Sophie's old instincts almost took over. She wanted to shrink, apologize, say she'd try harder. But something inside her had shifted. This time, she said, I think I want to stay somewhere safe tonight. 3 days later in court, things looked bleak. The judge seemed ready to send her back because there was no physical abuse. Then Mrs. Patterson, her neighbor, stood up and testified about years of silent suffering she'd seen. Years where she convinced herself surviving was enough, when in reality kids deserve more. Her testimony broke the room's heart, and for a moment, there was hope. The judge ordered 30 days of counseling for her father, temporary placement for Sophie to eye in those weeks. Sophie learned to breathe again, learned that bedtime wishes weren't rewards for perfection. She even started to trust that adults could listen and care. At her father's first supervised visit, he told her about his own fear, his own broken upbringing, and how he realized now he'd hurt her trying to make her strong. Sophie, braver than anyone in the room, told him words were one thing. She needed to see change. The second court date, her father stood up and read new family rules. You can express feelings, get affection, make mistakes, ask for help. And Sophie, in her small but steady voice, said, if the old rules come back, I will ask for help again, because I know now that I matter. The judge let her go home, with conditions. Regular check-ins, continued counseling, phone numbers to call if she ever felt unsafe. That it wasn't a magic fix. The first time she spilled her milk, Sophie tensed, waiting for punishment, but her father just cleaned it up with her, like it was nothing. When she needed to cry, he hugged her, letting her feel safe. Sophie told him, sometimes I still get scared. And her father told her that was okay, that being able to talk about fear was how families healed. Months later, Sophie walked back into that police station, not as a victim, but as a survivor, holding a drawing she'd made for the people who listened, who believed her, who helped her learn she deserved better. Thank you for teaching me that every child deserves to feel loved every day, she wrote. She'd turned her pain into purpose, wanting to help other kids know they matter. And as her father watched, changed by love and hard lessons, Sophie smiled and said, not every dad does what mine used to do. But now, my daddy loves me every day. And I want every kid to know it's okay to ask for help. There are grown-ups who will listen. You deserve to feel safe. You deserve to be loved. So let's talk. What do you think? Is emotional neglect as harmful as anything else? Can people truly change? Drop your thoughts below. Does every child really get the love they deserve? Or is that still just a dream for too many kids? Let's hear your story. Let's make sure every kid's voice is heard.